What's up everyone, it's Bones here. In today's video, I'll be showcasing the Valiants archetype that we'll be getting from Tactical Masters. Except this time around, I won't be able to show any replays because I just wasn't able to find any. And I felt that with this deck in particular, a good way to teach was to show some of the combos to show that the deck isn't necessarily as complicated as it looks. But anyways, before I begin, if you happen to enjoy content like this, clicking on those thumbs up and subscribe buttons would be greatly appreciated, as it goes a long way in supporting the channel and shows me that you like content like this. So, the first card that I'll be reviewing is Priestess of the Valiants, and this card reads that during your main phase, you can special summon this card to your main monster zone in this card's column. You also cannot special summon for the rest of this turn except Vaylantz monsters and monsters from the extra deck. So keep in mind that this locks you out of special summoning non-Valiant or Valiant monsters from the main deck, but not the extra deck. And you can only use this effect of Priestess once per turn. The monster effect reads, if you control this special summon card, you can add one Vaylantz spell from your deck to your hand, and if this card is moved from a monster zone to another, which this deck has plenty of ways to do so, you can add one Vaylantz monster from your deck to your hand, except Priestess, and you can only use each monster effect of Priestess once per turn. So, this is an amazing starter for the deck, as it's able to add spells and monsters, but it can also special summon itself from the scale with no requirements and a restriction that's really just a slap on the wrist. The next card we'll read, and this is another one of the better monsters in the deck in my opinion, is Baron, and it reads that in your Pendulum Zone during your main phase, you can special summon this card to your main monster zone in this card's column. That's another thing that I would like to point out about Vaylantz Pendulum monsters. Keep in mind where you place them when you put them in scale, because if you happen to summon one of your Vaylantz right here in the zone that my mouse is at, and you scale the Baron here, for example, you won't be able to special summon the Baron. So always try to put them in opposite zones, and try keeping your columns with your monster zones above the Pendulum zones open. So, much like Priestess, it also says you cannot special summon for the rest of this turn except Vaylantz monsters and monsters from the extra deck. Again, a slap on the wrist of a restriction, and you can only use this effect of Baron once per turn. The monster effect reads, if you control this special summon card, you can target one other Vaylantz monster in your main monster zone, move that target to a monster zone adjacent to it. And if this card is moved from a monster zone to another, you can target one card in the Pendulum Zone, place it face up in an adjacent spell and trap zone as a continuous spell, and you can only use each monster effect of Baron once per turn. So the monster effect to be able to move, as you can see, is how you're going to combo with the Priestess, but the secondary monster effect doesn't necessarily come up as much, though still important to remember because of follow-up plays. So to get started here, I'm going to start by activating the Priestess. We're then going to special summon it from the scale, and then we can use its special summoned effect in order to add a Valiant's VAR. And this card reads, add one Vaylantz field spell from your deck to your hand. Then you can destroy one Pendulum monster card you control. And if you do, add one Senate Switch from your deck to your hand. So something that I want to point out about this card in specific is that it reads that you can destroy one Pendulum monster card. So a Pendulum card in the Pendulum Zone, while in regular scenarios is just a spell card, because Valiant's VAR reads that you can destroy one Pendulum monster card you control, the card in its text refers to the original card type of that card. And something like this is Regulus, the Therion. And it states monster card when sending a Therion for a negate, and is still able to send an equipped Therion, which are treated as spells. So when playing this deck, that's important to remember, because we haven't had a deck quite like this that uses the pendulum mechanic the way it does. So I can imagine that this may be confusing for the beginning of this deck's lifespan in the TCG. But anyways, if you do, add one Senate switch from your deck to your hand, and during your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard, place one face-up Vaylantz Pendulum monster from your extra deck in your Pendulum Zone, and you can only use each effect of this card once per turn. So, to continue with the combo here, I'm going to activate the Baron, then use its effect to special summon it, and then I'm going to use the special summoned effect in order to move the Priestess, and then the Priestess will move to the adjacent zone, which will allow me to add a Valiant monster, which I'm going to add another one of the best monsters, and I know that I'm saying that about these, but I do think that these are the three best monsters in the main deck. And Viscount reads that in the Pendulum effect, during your main phase, you can special summon this card to your main monster zone in this card's column. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of this turn except Vaylantz monsters and monsters from the extra deck. You can only use each effect of this card in the Pendulum Zone once per turn. And monster effect, if you control this special summoned card, you can place one face-up Vaylantz Pendulum monster from your extra deck face-up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell. If this card is moved from a monster zone to another, you can place one face-up Vaylantz Pendulum monster from your extra deck in your Pendulum Zone. You can only use each effect of Vaylantz Voltage Viscount once per turn. So, as you see, Viscount, Priestess, and Baron here can all special summon themselves from the scale for free and have effects that can help the deck gain advantage, which is one of the pros about this deck. So, from here, I'm going to link away into Beyond the Pendulum, and I'm going to add the Kendo Spirit, and this is a pick that I saw from an OCG list a while back, and the entire point of this being in the deck is that all the Valiants, as you can see, are scale 1, something I forgot to mention. And because your whole deck is basically scale 1s, I had to add in some high scales in order to Pendulum Summon and be able to make use of Beyond the Pendulum. And that's where Kendo Spirit came in. So, from here I'm going to place the Viscount on the scale. It's negated because of Beyond the Pendulum. Then activate the Spirit, same thing. And from here we're going to Pendulum Summon 2, which we bring back the Baron and the Priestess. And from here we're going to trigger the Kendo because a monster was summoned. Beyond the Pendulum is no longer negating the scales, and Spirit comes back to the hand off of its Pendulum effect. So I'm going to link away here into Masquerena, and then we can use the Viscount and special summon that, in which then we can use its effect, which will allow us to place a Valiant monster in the scale from our extra deck, and then we can use the Valiant's VAR. And we'll add a field spell, the first one, and it's called Shinra Bansho or Shinra Tensei. But when this card is activated, place one Vaylantz field spell from your deck face up in your opponent's field zone, except Vaylantz World Shinra Bansho. If there are two cards in the field zone, this turn, the turn player can target one monster card in their spell and trap zones that special summons it to their main monster zone in its column. So I added this one in specific because it's an extender for this combo, and you can only use each of these effects once per turn. So we're going to pop the Priestess here off the war to add the Senate switch, and then we can activate the Senate switch and move the Viscount, which will trigger its effect and add a Valiant from our extra deck to our Pendulum Zone, in which then we can use the field spell to special summon the Valiant from the monster zone so that we have two more monsters. But before I do that, I'm going to read the second field spell, and it reads that when this card is activated, place one Vaylantz field spell from your deck face up in your opponent's field zone, except this one, and if there are two cards in the field zone, this player can target one effect monster in their opponent's main monster zone in the same column as a monster that the turn player controls, and that player places their opponent's monster face up in their spell and trap zone in that monster's column as a continuous spell. If a card is already in that zone, destroy it, and you can only use this effect of this field spell once per turn. So, as you can see, it's more of a going second field spell and something that you use on your follow-up, which will explain the ratios when I cover the deck profile, but to continue the combo, you're going to see that we're going to special summon the Priestess, and now we're going to link away into the Pit Knight in order to give you an extra disruption. And this deck would be a lot stronger if Verte were unbanned or if we had Electromite. But this is kind of what I was able to come up with for the deck's turn 1, because there's not a lot of easy ways to get into tuners for help unless you play E-Telly and stuff like that, which you still kind of have to draw the E-Telly. And all the Vaylantz are non-tuners, which makes having Hulk Dagda combos a little bit more difficult, which is why this is the end board. So now I'm going to go through the second combo, and this time I'm using 2 different Vaylantz all together to show that there's different combinations that you can use to combo and kind of end on similar stuff. So we're going to activate the Viscount here, special summon it, and again, this is why I say Viscount, Priestess, and Baron are, in my opinion, the best monsters, just being free bodies, as we can now use Marquise, the level 6, and we can special summon that, in which now we can use its effect. And as you see, this depends on what you mill. For the sake of the combo, I'm just going to add the Priestess. But this combo is entirely RNG dependent, unless you happen to open something else in hand. As you see, I have 3 cross-out designators, so take that as you will, and take it with a grain of salt, because this is a deck that unfortunately doesn't have as many starters, and the ceiling raises exponentially when you happen to have Priestess. But as you see, the deck isn't dead without it. So we're going to link summon Beyond the Pendulum here, use its effect, get ourselves the scale 9, the Kendo Spirit, and now we can scale the Vaylantz added off the Marquise and the Kendo Spirit, giving us the pendulum scales to bring back 2 monsters here. And say that you didn't get the Priestess or a monster to special summon off the scale, like if you got a repeated one, then you can do something like make IP and go into Avramax, which is hard for some decks to out. And I know it's not the greatest because it's not even a disruption, but without Electromite and some of the stronger Link to end board cards, this is kind of what we have to work with here in the TCG. So the Kendo Spirit is going to return to the hand because we pendulum summoned. Now we can use the Priestess. The Priestess will then get its effect, which will add us the Valyant's VAR. And from here we can use the VAR, add the same field spell, the Shinra Bansho or the Shinra Tensei, and then we can destroy the pendulum monster that's under one of the pointers specifically. It didn't matter which one, but we're going to use the Senate switch here in order to move the Priestess and then get its effect in order to add the Baron. And now we can activate the Baron in order to special summon it. So the only way that the Valiant's VAR destruction mattered was if you already had a monster here, but because we had the Senate switch to move it, either zone worked, but that's something to keep in mind. And from here we're going to use the effect of Baron to move the Viscount, and then we can use the Viscount effect to get us back the level 6 in the scale. And now we can use the field spell to get the extra extender, also giving the opponent the field. One thing that's cool about this field spell though is if you happen to see it in your opening hand, at least either one of them, you can place another field in your opponent's field to play around imperm or evenly and stuff like that. So you'll see that we're gonna link summon the Pit Knight here and end on basically the same end board, except with 2 different cards, even though we did excavate the Priestess. So now I'm going to show a quote-unquote god hand, and as you can see we have a bunch of the same starters that you saw in the last two combos, and this is why I said that the deck wasn't necessarily as complicated as it looks. There is a lot of zone moving and stuff that you have to remember, but what you're going for really is the same here. And you'll see that we're going to start this by using the Curtain Raiser, and you want to use the Curtain Raiser first so that the Vaylantz don't lock you out of special summoning any main deck monsters for the rest of the turn outside of Vaylantz, as we're going to place the Priestess, use its effect here, and special summon it, then use its effect, adding the VAR, and from here we can use the Baron, then activate the Baron, special summon it, then use the Baron effect, moving the Priestess, use the Priestess effect, which will add us the Viscount, and then we can link summon into Beyond the Pendulum. And it's important that you special summon your Curtain Raiser, as you see there, because you want to keep both zones open for your Pendulum summon. But from here, we'll activate the Viscount and the Window Spirit in the Pendulum zones. Their effects negated because of Beyond the Pendulum. Now we can Pendulum summon. The scales are active again. And now we're going to use the Viscount to special summon itself. And now we can use the Vaylantz VAR, as we're going to add the same field spell. Always add this field spell when going first, and getting the Senate switch by popping the Marquise. And now we're going to link summon into IP, use the Senate switch here, move the Viscount, and then use the Viscount effect, placing a Vaylantz on the scale again, use the field, place a field in the opponent's field spell zone, and then from there special summon your Vaylantz monster and go back into your Pit Knight. But we're not done here yet, as we're going to use the Marquise effect now, and now we can use its effect to excavate, and this is also dependent on what you get. If you hit the level 6 here, what you can do is you can tribute summon here, and you have to tribute summon to a zone under an extra monster zone in specific in order to bring Grand Duke out. And I'm doing this just to show you can, even though it's not necessarily a great end board monster, as you'll see in a moment. But as it reads, its Pendulum effect, you can activate one of these effects. Special summon this card to your main monster zone in its same column. Then the second one of these is move one monster zone in your main monster zone to an adjacent horizontal monster zone, and you can only use this effect of Vaylantz Genesis Grand Duke once per turn. The monster effect reads that it takes two Vaylantz monsters, and this face down card in the extra deck must first either be fusion summoned or special summoned by tributing one level 5 or higher non-fusion Vaylantz monster in the same column as the extra monster zone. If this card is special summoned, you can target one monster card in your opponent's spell and trap zone, return it to the hand, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to its attack, then this card gains attack equal to half of the damage inflicted. So while this card does nothing much going first, because you have to take awkward plays to kind of get it out early enough, like Pendulum summoning a level 6 under the Pendulum zone when you happen to go off with your Vaylantz early in the combo and stuff like that. That's really the only way that you can make use of this effect any earlier than this. Even then, it's something that you would want to do going second. So onto the deck profile here, and you'll see that there actually only is one Marquise and one Nazuki. And I know that this may look strange. This could actually be bumped up to 2 if you would like. I just didn't want to clog on these, because if you happen to open, say, 2 Marquise, 1 Nazuki, cross out, and Senate switch, then the hand is entirely unplayable. If I wanted the most chances of consistency, I felt I had to play the little ones here at 3 with the 3 Curtain Raisers in order to make sure I could consistently always have bodies on board to link summon with. You'll see that there's also room for the prosperities and a lot of hand traps here, as there's 12 with the 3 crossouts and the 1 called by, which is another pro that this deck has. These are just off of my initial results of testing. And I'm going to go over these cards here because, as mentioned before, you could technically find a way into a Scythe combo in which you would special summon something like Tornado Dragon. It's just that there's not a lot of consistent ways to do that with these cards here. You'll see that I do play the Hulk, but the Hulk is really just for the Selene access code play, which you just use one of your hand traps to go into Hulk. And there's the Sphere Mode and the Lava Golem. You can play these because the deck really doesn't need its normal summon. You're not normal summoning that much in this deck. The Small World I've seen as an option in this deck to tutor out your monsters. There are bridges that you can take with this deck, as there's Spellcaster 500 Water level 2 along with Fire level 2 800. Also helps that Ash is a fire. It's 0 1800 and 3 stars, which can bridge you to your Small World options. Then there's the sideboard options here with Mystic Mind, Dark Ruler, Forbidden Droplet, Ultimate Slayer, your board breaking cards really. And then I have the D-Barrier here because of Crossout. Things like Nibiru can be here too for Crossout. So that's just something to note. And then lastly, this is a Pendulum deck, so Anti-Spell Fragrance is really an enemy of the deck. Onto the card by card, you'll see that we have 1 Marquise, 3 Priestess, 3 Viscount, 3 Baron, 1 Nazuki, 1 Scion, which I actually have not read yet, and what it reads is that in your Pendulum Zone, during your main phase, you can special summon this card to your main monster zone in this card's column. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of this turn except Vaylantz monsters and monsters from the extra deck. You can only use this effect of Archer once per turn. And monster effect reads, if you control this special summon card, you can target 1 effect monster on the field, toss a coin, and if the result is heads, negate its effect. If the result is tails, its current attack becomes halved. If this card is moved from a main monster zone to another, you can target 1 card on the field, toss a coin, and if the result is heads, destroy it. If the result is tails, return it to the hand, and you can only use each of these effects once per turn. So, as you can see, the Pendulum Zone effect is the same as these, but the only reason that we don't play it at any more than 1 is because it doesn't combo. Then you have your 1 of Beyond the Pendulum search target most of the time, the Kendo Spirit, the 3 Curtain Raiser, then you have the 1 Shinra Bansho with the 2 other field spells, and I have these ratios the same as the OCG build because the way that this deck plays, you're really using this going first to combo off. If you go second, you can just give them this. But it's just, you don't want to clog on the field spells either, which is why there's such a low amount, especially considering the fact that your Priestess can add you VAR, which adds you 1 of the field spells. Along with the VAR, we have the Senate switch here. But then we have the 1 called by, the 3 Crossout, the 3 Ash Blossoms, the 3 Crows, the 3 Prosperities, 3 Imperms, 3 Veilers, and onto the extra deck we have the 1 Grand Duke. There is a second one of these. So the second fusion monster that we have here is Amonaka, and its pendulum effect is during your main phase you can activate 1 of these effects, special summon this to your main monster zone in this card's column, move 1 monster zone in your main monster zone to an adjacent monster zone, and you can only use this effect of Momonaka once per turn, and then its monster effect, it takes 3 Vaylantz monsters, and during the main phase quick effect you can target 1 effect monster your opponent's main monster zone. Place that monster up in their spell and trap zone, that monster's column as a continuous spell. A card is already in that zone, and destroy it. And if it was a monster card, your opponent loses life points equal to its attack. You can only use this effect of Vaylantz Assemble Momonaka once per turn, and if this card is special summoned and its owner's control is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can place this card in your Pendulum Zone. So the reason that we're not playing this is because you actually have to hard make it. So for anyone wondering that, that's why. And for the last spell card of the archetype, We have Vaylantz Vacaning, which place one Vaylantz Pendulum monster from your deck in your Pendulum zone. If a card is in your field zone, you can banish this card from the graveyard, then target one Vaylantz monster in your main monster zone. Move that monster you control to an adjacent horizontal monster zone. You can only use each effect of Vaylantz Vacaning solo activation once per turn. And unfortunately, this card is not coming out in Tactical Masters yet. I'm just going over it to show that the deck still has support on the way. And then another card that is optional to play, I just didn't include it into this list because I don't feel we need it. Same thing with the Duke here. And the Duke reads, if this field spell is in the field spell zone, or you control a fire Vaylantz monster, you can special summon this card to your main monster zone in this card's column. You can only use this effect of Vaylantz Dominator Duke once per turn, and monster effect, you can target one set card in the spell trap zone. It cannot be activated this turn. If this card is moved from a monster zone to another, you can target one face-up monster in your opponent's main monster zone. Take control of the face-up monster, but it cannot declare an attack or activate its effects. Also, it is treated as a Vaylantz monster. You can only use each effect of Vaylantz Dominator Duke once per turn. So as you see, it's more of a going second card, like the level 6s. If you control a monster with the same attribute as it, you can special summon it. But I just wanted to add cards that you could kind of play their own with. Then we have Hojo here, which if Shinra Bansho is in a field zone, or you control a water monster, or a water Vaylantz monster, you can special summon this card to your main monster zone in this card's column, the alternative of Duke, and you can only use this effect of Hojo once per turn. And the monster effect is that you can target one face-up card in the spell trap zone, return it to the hand. This card is moved from a monster zone to another. You can fusion summon one Vaylantz fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand, field, or fusion as material, as well as cards in the Pendulum zone. So as you see, that is how you get into your Monaka. Between the resources needed to actually get there and the fact that you have to add it or hard draw it is just why I chose not to play it, and I may be wrong for that. If I am, let me know down below in the comment section. I just wanted to try to make this as consistently functionable as possible. Now that we've gone over all the Vaylantz cards, continue the rest of the card by card here, and we have the one Dweller, the one Bagu, the Avramax, the Appaloosa, the Access Code, the Unicorn, Celine, the Beyond the Pendulum, Hida, Area, as you see it, the whole Fire-Water deck, and then you have the Hulk, the Master, Pit Knight, and the Barricade Bard Blocker. Found out the deck profile. Anyways, that's all for today's video, and I hope this helped for those trying to learn the deck and wanted to see what it was capable of doing. I think it's definitely a fun gimmick deck to play, as that's kind of what Tactical Masters feels like, just three very unique gimmick decks that may not be the most competitive, but they'll still be loads of fun, as there's nothing in the game quite like them. But anyway, made it this far into the video, I thank you for watching. If you have any comments or suggestions, feel free to leave them down below. It's Bones, signing out.